What if I told you there's a book so dangerous that it got banned in the United States, and exactly 1 year after its publication, the author, who happened to be a sitting president, was overthrown in a CIA-sponsored coup? And, what if I told you that this book, written almost 60 years ago, explains exactly what's happening in Africa today? From France's interventions in Ivory Coast to NATO's assault on Libya, from mining corporations controlling entire countries to the endless cycle of aid that somehow leaves African nations poorer than before. Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial and eye-opening books ever written about Africa's relationship with the West. But first, let me tell you a story. Picture this. It's 1965. The world is still reeling from decolonization. African nations are celebrating their newfound independence. Flag ceremonies are happening left and right, and everyone's talking about freedom and self-determination. Beautiful, right? But then this guy, Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, drops what can only be described as the ultimate buzzkill. He publishes a book that basically says, hold up everybody, this whole independence thing, it's an illusion. We've just traded visible chains for invisible ones.
Get out of here. Get out of here!
Now imagine you're sitting in Washington, D.C., probably in some fancy government building reading this book that's systematically exposing how American corporations are essentially running Africa like their personal ATM machine. You're reading chapter titles like The Oppenheimer Empire, the diamond groups and mining interests in Central Africa. And this guy has receipts, hard facts, figures, names, corporate structures. He's literally drawing you a map of how the game is rigged.
Oh my sweet Jesus.
What do? Well, if you're the US government in 1965, apparently you ban the book. But that's not enough, because this troublemaker is still out there, still talking, still a sitting president with a platform. So exactly 1 year later, February 24th, 1966, oops, there's a coup in Ghana. What a coincidence. And decades later, when those CIA files get declassified, surprise, turns out Uncle Sam had his fingers all over that coup.
Damn!
But here's the beautiful irony. By trying to silence Nkrumah, they basically proved his entire thesis. Nothing says this book is accurate quite like overthrowing its author, am I right?
Mic drop. Let's go home.
So what exactly was in this book that had powerful people so rattled? Well, buckle up, because Nkrumah didn't come to play games. The book opens with this absolute mic drop of a statement.
Africa is a paradox which illustrates and highlights neo-colonialism. Her earth is rich, yet the products that come from above and below her soil continue to enrich, not Africans predominantly, but groups of and individuals who operate to Africa's impoverishment.
Basically, he's saying we have all the resources, but somehow we're still broke. Make it make sense. And then he does make it make sense. He breaks down exactly how this magic trick works.
Okay, pay attention, because I'm only going to go over this 10 more times.
See, after World War II, colonialism became unfashionable. Nobody wanted to be seen as the bad guy anymore. But European countries had gotten used to that African money flowing in. Those resources were literally powering their post-war economic boom. So they had to get creative. Enter Neo-Colonialism, the art of controlling a country without actually looking like you're controlling it. As Nkrumah puts it,
The game is rigged.
Neo-colonialism is based upon the principles of breaking up former large united colonial territories into a number of small, non-viable states which are incapable of independent development and must rely upon the former imperial power for defense and even internal security.
it's genius, really, in a completely evil way. You give people political independence, they get their flag, their anthem, their president, but you keep economic control. And here's the kicker.
Open your eyes, Patrick!
In neo-colonialist territories, since the former colonial power has in theory relinquished political control, if the social conditions occasioned by neo-colonialism cause a revolt, the local neo-colonialist government can be sacrificed and another equally subservient one substituted in its place.
Translation: when people get angry about their living conditions, they blame their own government, not the foreign corporations actually calling the shots. And if that government becomes too much trouble, just replace it with another puppet. Problem solved.
Sneaky, sneaky.
But wait, it gets worse. Nkrumah shows how these corporations achieved total control through what he calls vertical and horizontal integration. They don't just mine the gold, they control the mining, the transport, the processing, the pricing on international markets, and the manufacturing of finished products. They literally control both supply and demand. It's like if you owned all the wheat farms, all the trucks that transport wheat, all the flour mills, all the bakeries, and all the grocery stores. You'd basically control the price of bread for everyone, wouldn't you? And the numbers? Oh, the numbers are wild. Check this out.
Direct private American investment in Africa increased between 1945 and 1958 from $110 million to $789 million, most of it drawn from profits. Of the increase of $679 million, actual new money invested during the period was only $149 million. United States profits from these investments, including reinvestment of surpluses, being estimated at $704 million. As a result, African countries sustained losses of $555 million.
Let me break that down. America invested $679 million, but only $149 million was actually new money. The rest came from profits they'd already extracted from Africa. Then they made $704 million in profits. So Africa basically paid for its own exploitation and ended up $555 million poorer. That's some next-level financial wizardry right there. Now here's where Nkrumah gets really detailed. And honestly, reading this felt like getting a masterclass in global economics and corporate manipulation. He has this incredible chapter called The Truth Behind the Headlines, where he shows how to decode news stories. Like, you see an innocent headline like Morgan Grenfell participates in new French bank, and you think, oh, that's nice, international cooperation. But Nkrumah breaks it down.
Morgan Grenfell and Company acts effectively as the London end of the important American banking house J.P. Morgan and Company, which, in 1956, already owned 1/3 of the British company. It should not therefore surprise us to learn that the new Continental Bank in which Morgan Grenfell is participating is called Morgan HC. More especially, since 70% of the capital of 10 million new francs is held by Morgan Guaranty International Finance Corporation and 15% by Morgan Grenfell.
So what looks like a French bank is actually controlled by American interests, with British and Dutch subsidiaries that are also controlled by the same American interests. It's like those Russian nesting dolls, except instead of wooden dolls, it's corporate control all the way down. And this is just one example. The book is full of these breakdowns showing how the same few individuals and corporations control multiple industries across multiple countries. Nkrumah describes it as being like an octopus, one body with tentacles reaching everywhere. He even exposes how they manipulate scarcity to maintain high prices.
The manipulation of artificial scarcity is another of monopoly's tactics for maintaining profits. For 3 years between mid-1964, the big copper companies were running at between 80 and 85% of capacity to keep up prices. Steel production too was held back to something like 80% of capacity.
So when you hear about shortages and high prices, sometimes it's not because there isn't enough. It's because someone is deliberately limiting supply to maximize profits.
They may as well be tossing their dinero and they wishing well.
And when African countries try to fight back, well, suddenly there are tribal conflicts, civil wars, or humanitarian crises that require international intervention. Just look at what happened in the Congo, a country that's basically being managed by mining corporations while the world looks the other way. But it's not just economic control. Nkrumah exposes how this system uses culture, education, and media to make us believe we're incapable of governing ourselves. Hollywood movies, cultural attachés, Peace Corps volunteers, information services, they're all part of what he calls the war against African unity and development. And it works. We end up internalizing the message that we need Western guidance for everything.
Yeah, you're right. I feel super guilty.
He points out that not too long ago, Chinese and Japanese people were looked down upon the same way Africans are now. But look at China today. It commands respect because it united and built economic power. That's exactly what these forces don't want to see happen in Africa.
I see.
So what is this dangerous book that got a president overthrown? It's Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism by Kwame Nkrumah, published in 1965. 283 pages of pure, unfiltered truth about how the global economic system really works. Now, I have to be honest with you, I tried to review this book multiple times, and I kept getting overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information. As I wrote in my review, no amount of thinking would lead to a clearer review, because there's just so much packed into these pages. But here's what struck me the most. Everything Nkrumah described in 1965 is still happening today. When France intervened in Ivory Coast, when NATO destroyed Libya, when we see African leaders who seem more comfortable in foreign capitals than in their own countries, it all makes sense when you understand the system Nkrumah exposed. The book doesn't just identify problems, it offers solutions. Nkrumah advocated for African unity as the key to breaking free from this system. A united Africa would have the economic power to negotiate as equals, to control its own resources, to build its own industries. But that's exactly what's being prevented. Every attempt at unity gets undermined through the same mechanisms Nkrumah described: economic pressure, political interference, cultural manipulation. And here's the thing that really gets me. Nkrumah wasn't against foreign investment. He makes this clear.
While foreign private investment must be encouraged, it must be carefully regulated so that it is directed to important growth sectors without leaving control of such sectors in foreign hands.
He wanted partnership, not exploitation. Fair deals, not highway robbery. The book ends with this powerful reminder.
The change in the economic relationship between the new sovereign states and the erstwhile masters is only one of form. Colonialism has achieved a new guise. It has become neo-colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. Its final bid for existence as monopoly capitalism or imperialism is the last stage of capitalism.
And his call to action.
It is necessary to study, understand, expose, and actively combat neo-colonialism in whatever guise it may appear. For the methods of neo-colonialism are subtle and varied. They operate not only in the economic field, but also in the political, religious, ideological, and cultural spheres.
So who was this man who dared to speak these truths? Kwame Nkrumah lived from 1909 to 1972. He was Ghana's first prime minister and first president, leading the country to independence from British colonial rule in 1957. He was a founding member of the Organization of African Unity and won the Lenin Peace Prize in 1963. But more than his titles and achievements, Nkrumah was a visionary who saw through the illusions of his time. While others celebrated political independence, he understood that without economic independence, political freedom was, well, pretty much meaningless. He was a Pan-Africanist who believed that Africa's salvation lay in unity, and for that vision, for daring to expose the system that keeps Africa divided and exploited, he paid the ultimate price. This book should be required reading for every African leader, every student of international relations, and honestly, anyone who wants to understand how the modern world really works. The demons Nkrumah unveiled in 1965 are the same forces we're fighting today. The methods have been refined, the technology has advanced, but the fundamental system remains the same. As I asked in my review, what happens when Africa's natural resources run out? What happens when substitutes are found for diamond, rubber, crude oil? Development can't wait. Unity can't wait. The time is now. If this video opened your eyes, just imagine what the full 283 pages will do. Get the book, read it, share it. Because as Nkrumah knew, knowledge is the first step toward liberation. What do you think? Have you seen examples of neo-colonialism in action? Let me know in the comments below. And if this content resonates with you, subscribe for more deep dives into the books and ideas that explain our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep fighting for truth. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.